oh, trust us and apply. I'm sure we've got a good process to really filter out and find the best people.
Welcome to Just Trust Me, the marketing podcast that'll raise your eyebrow right up to your hairline. I'm Rachel Moore, your producer and co-host of this podcast, along with Elizabeth Allen and Tanya Ballard-Brown. With our savvy for content marketing, digital marketing, and journalism, we dissect and discuss where we should or shouldn't trust the marketing we see every day. Today we're talking about influencer marketing, job hunting, employer and personal branding, and your next pasta and hair care purchases. At the end of the episode, I chat with a personal branding expert and queen of the self-made gifts, Christine Gritman. Let's do this, y'all. We're back, everybody, with your next episode of Just Trust Me, the podcast that all marketers hope their customers never find. It's also the podcast that makes us go, what the F, about what we're seeing every day. With me today, I got Elizabeth.
Holla. I have nothing else to say.
All right, Tanya, your turn. Go.
Greetings and salutations, my friends. How are you? How are you? How are you?
That sounds very sage-like.
She did a better job than me. It's okay.
But I trust her now, so, but I don't know why I said holler either. I'm total white book over here. But yes, let's get into it. So I know it's been another week in the follies of marketing and the world and everything. And I know we actually had some stuff we didn't get to talk about on last episode. We're totally going to talk about it here. And let's kick that off. Elizabeth, fill our listeners in on your current state of affairs and the fact that you are on the free market for employment.
Yes, if somebody needs a content marketing manager that likes to talk about books and ridiculous trivia information, please hit me up. I was laid off about a month and a half ago from a job I very much liked, from a company I very much liked. So while it's, it's sad, but it's definitely like a bittersweet thing because everybody's been so wonderful and helpful to me about it, which is unusual for a layoff. Usually you leave angry. So I am back on the open market and I'm trying to kind of figure it out. It's the first time I've been unemployed since, God, I don't know, 2007 maybe. I was unemployed for about 6 months. So I'm working through that. But yeah, it's an interesting process, especially because I realized when I was unemployed in like 2007, none of the technology when it comes to like the unemployment, like applying for unemployment has come along at all since that time. I was cracking up because, it's now 2024 and I'm applying for jobs that are based in different countries because we have internet now. Sorry. And yeah, the unemployment, at least in my state, won't even allow you submit a job you searched for that is outside of the country. You just can't. I'm actually surprised they let you even do it outside of the state, quite frankly.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so there's literally no way to do it. So I have a couple that I'm looking for that are, like one's based in Canada, and there's just no way to do it. But yeah, so I feel like, maybe your states are better than mine, but it's frustrating because as it is, the unemployment process is annoying to begin with, especially because I was talking to my husband the other day and he's like, well, did you apply for unemployment? And it goes by weeks. And I applied and then I got rejected because my severance was still going because it's always like 3 weeks behind. It's really hard to figure out. Anyway, that's really not important. But yeah, just one of those frustrating things on top of we know what the job market is like now. You're applying for, hundreds of jobs. You maybe hear back from one or two people. And then the process itself is insane. So just one more frustration in the process. But yeah, I was talking about like what kind of questions I'm seeing now in interviews. And it is really interesting to me now that we're having the AI topic constantly comes up. And it's funny because you can tell the companies who are asking you about AR are kind of like feeling you out to see what you know about it because they don't know a lot about it. And they're all trying to figure out like how is AI going to fit into our strategy and how we work as a company? And it sounds almost like they're hoping to God you have the answer. So if you're in the job market and you are, preparing for interviews, maybe brush up on, what your skill set is when it comes to AI, because you probably will be asked about it, which again, the last time I was interviewing for jobs in 2007, I couldn't have even fathomed this, that people are asking about AI.
Well, I was just going to say that one of the things, tying into our conversation about marketing is that part of job hunting is marketing yourself. And when our initial conversations, after patting your hair and giving you hugs and everything and just making sure you were okay, was when do you post, when do you let people know, that LinkedIn post that lets people know, I'm on the market, and what should you say in it, and the timing of it and all that kind of stuff. Like, now marketing is not just for businesses, we have to market ourselves, and some of us are better at it than
it's
others.
because we all have become a brand in and of ourselves, and I don't think we're all used to seeing ourselves that way, even though we've been creating these brands forever in our personal lives, whether it be on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. That's all a part of our personal brand. And I think we're finally getting to a point in time, and we've been there for a little bit, but we're finally starting to understand it, is that brand flows over into our jobs themselves and being in the job market. We are a brand. And so, as like you said, as we talk about marketing all the time, this is something that you need to keep in mind. And part of my issue was that I wasn't emotionally prepared. Usually if you're leaving a job and you start job searching, even if you're currently still with another job, you're psyching yourself up to get there. When I was laid off, I was not emotionally or mentally prepared for it. So I personally just did not go into it with the gusto that, some people that I'm speaking to here are really great about, creating their own kind of series about their job search. I have not gotten there yet, but, it's definitely something I keep in mind when going through this process, is that I'm a brand in and of myself.
Well, you touch on something there too. That is completely fake, by the way. Let's just talk about the mindfuck that applying to jobs is. Even in good markets, right now is ridiculous. Like, I know we've talked about this. If you don't apply within the first hour, you've already 200 or more applicants have beaten you to the punch, and sometimes they're closing jobs 3 hours after they post them because we got all the applicants we need. So then let's imagine you get to the interview process. You need to act excited, but not too excited. You don't want to be overly energetic or enthusiastic.
You don't want them to know you need them,
Exactly. You're like, I'm confident, but I'm not desperate. Even though I'm totally desperate, It's rough.
Yeah, and then
you're not supposed to talk money, but okay, I don't know about other people. I mean, yes, I'm a journalist and everything, and it's a calling and all that kind of stuff, but I also work for money. I work because I like to eat, and I like to wear clothes and feed my fancy dog and all that kind of stuff. And so I hate that caginess too, which is shifting by now people having to post at least a job salary range. In job postings in a lot of places now.
But the range itself is
a little bit of cat and mouse.
And the range itself is bullshit, because that's what companies are doing to get around the fact that job applicants are looking for that range. So you're like, oh, okay, we'll give you a range. Yeah. And then it's fucking useless. It's like, $60,000 to $280,000. What that doesn't give me anything. So you're going to have to go through pretty much the entire process. And what will likely happen is you've been through 8 interviews, probably some sort of project. And then at that point, you can finally be like, okay, where in this range does this job realistically fall? And of course, it's usually toward the lower end. It's, that's just always how it works out. But yeah, I understand. Like, I'm glad that people are finally starting to call for salary transparency when it comes to these positions. But we have definitely not gotten there yet, because companies are finding a way to work around it.
Okay, might age myself here, but hopefully people listening to this have seen the movie Young Frankenstein, where he's like training. So he's training, the creature, and something blows up on the stage and it all goes right. So he's trying to get him to start dancing, and he goes 5, 6, 7, 8. And I think of that whenever I think of those interview rounds, where it's like, keep dancing, yep. Come on, keep tap dancing around, and we'll get you through yet another hoop. I mean, even Elizabeth, I know you and I worked at the same company. had a lot of rounds, if I remember.
That had a lot of rounds. And while I appreciated that they acknowledged that, because that is, I think, something companies can do if they're going through that, like at least acknowledge that, like, I know this is ridiculous. But and I look back on it now, I was with that company for about 2.5 years, and the people they forced me to meet with in this, I think it was 8 rounds of interviews, I literally never saw again in the entire time I worked there. I wasn't going to be working with them. It wasn't a position where I was really going to be touching them at all in my day-to-day process. And so, like, part of me thinks like companies have decided that's what they're supposed to do, and so they just kind of crowbar in. And I've also found too, and I'm sure a lot of you have, is that we don't even start with the interview now. We start with like the personality checks. And there's usually not just one. There's like a couple of them, because I need to make sure, which I appreciate the personality checks. I think that's like one of the biggest, most important parts of, you know, finding an employee is whether or not your team is going to get along with them. But, you know, there 2 personality checks before I even hit the interview portion. And then it's weird too, because it kind of sets the precedent. So you're like, you know, you're used to having just kind of like a cool, casual, organic conversation. And now all of a sudden it's like you have to be on. But you weren't really that person the entire time, because everybody, you know, everybody's different when they're actually going through the formal interview process. So it seems silly. It's very performative to me. And I do think a lot of companies just feel like this is what they have to do because that's what other companies are doing. You know, it's the same thing with these, you know, projects that companies give you. And I have a whole argument about that. It's, you know, unpaid labor. I'm not cool with it, you know, especially because you hear nightmare stories all the time where somebody gets rejected for the position and months later they see whatever project they came up with, whatever content they came up with is on the company's website or is a part of their social media campaign. So yeah, I just think, and I feel like the longer this goes, the longer the process is going to become and the more cumbersome it's going to become until people just start refusing to. But usually we're all in a position where it's like, I don't really feel like I can refuse to because I need a job. I've got that mortgage. Yep.
You're desperate. That's right. Like Tanya said too.
Yep.
You need money. That's what blows me too. I do see a lot of commentary too, and at least in the people I follow in my feed. They're like, stop with this, like, well, we don't want somebody who's just in it for the money. I'm like, what do you think this is? This is a business decision. Are you not just in it for the money business? You're telling me you're giving stuff away free to your customers? Miss me with that. It's ridiculous.
Right. I mean, I can enjoy the work and enjoy getting
and that's
paid at
the goal.
time. Like they're
sitting down and logging in every morning, but also if I had, you know, fuck me money, I would be doing literally anything else probably than sitting down and, you know, doing what I do on a day. I wouldn't be worrying about being in a Teams chat or logging in for a call, you know, Monday morning so that everybody can just kind of stare at each other. I would be doing things very differently, and they would be too. And I think, like, again, the word performative I used earlier, it's the same thing, because it's like we're talking and whoever's interviewing you feels the exact same way. Unless you're an author or something, one of those callings, like a musician where it's like more a part of your art. But a lot of us, I mean, we love doing what we do, but it is a job.
Yeah, and this does get back to the trust, you know, and we talked about that too. All these personas, you know, all the like, oh, trust us and apply. You know, I'm sure we've got a good process to really filter out and find the best people. And then, you know, then in turn, they're like you were mentioning, oh, trust me that I, you know what I'm talking about with AI, which I, you know, there's nothing stopping you from, like, on the side, be like, well, let me just be looking up and ChatGPT.
Oh my God, that reminds me. I have a quick story about that. My husband was interviewing somebody for a position with his company. They were doing it via Zoom, and he was watching the guy as they were asking him the questions. He could see his eyes like track across the screen, and he absolutely figured out that every single question they asked him, he was typing into ChatGPT, and he was just reading off of it. But he wasn't a good enough performer to like make it come, you know, sell it really. So, which is a skill. And so, and my husband was just like, I could watch his eyes track as he's reading it back off to us. And I'm like, oh, so like, yeah, I mean, there are some things where I'm like, okay, that's fair. Like, you can't do the whole interview like that. And he did literally the entire interview was him trying to do that. But yeah, the AI thing, you know, especially because we're all kind of stumbling through it together at the same time. You know?
Yeah.
Right. My boss actually was asking, we were having a little brief conversation about it earlier today. And in my business, I don't want AI writing anything, But I also can see ways in that it might be helpful, because there are times when I am really stumped about a headline and I'm like, I don't know, and so maybe, I would not use what they spit out, but it helps with like, I didn't think about, framing it that way.
Yeah.
It just helps noodle through, right?
Yeah.
But there's this idea that it is going to take over everything, and I think that makes people fearful, and it's out here, and I think we gotta, as a society, like, get on board. I mean, it's like when those lead, follow, or get out of the way kind of things.
Yeah.
And there's no putting the lid back on this. So it's out here, so we got to figure out like how it fits, if it fits, and how it fits in a way that makes sense.
It is. I mean, it's a tool, and it's another resource we all can be using. But like I said earlier, we do have to figure out how we're going to incorporate it in. But it is something we're going to be seeing more and more of in every aspect of our lives. But a big one of that is at our jobs. And before I left my last company, we were kind of starting to work through that process to figure out what that would look like. So I can kind of very high level in these interviews speak to that. But I'm definitely not somebody who has any like AI certification or anything. I was kind of actually just starting to work through that right before I was laid off. So yeah, it's just something that people have to keep in mind if they're going through this process. I hope to God you're not, because we all know it sucks. But if you are, that's going to be on the forefront of a lot of these companies' minds, because they know it's going to, it impacts all of our lives at some point, and every aspect of it. It's going to impact our day-to-day jobs.
One last thing I want to add to the topic of like applying and being unemployed, and talk about these jobs who they're putting out, okay, they're posting jobs with these like super wide and possibly ranged salaries to just be a catch-all. I do want to call out companies, because I saw this in the last week, and especially as someone, I got laid off last January. And, I don't know, do you all have like companies where you're like, oh my God, I do have like a dream list of companies where if I could ever work there, that would be amazing, or I think it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did, and then they all folded during the pandemic.
Oh,
I'm
no.
not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. I
Dang.
can tick off like 4 different places that are gone.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really sad.
Dude. There you go. So, a company that I thought I wanted to work for and actually knew people at and got like internal referrals. And I applied to it twice because within over several months, they posted a head of content or director of content. They posted it the first time and I applied and I got a rejection. They posted it a second time. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to apply again, because you just never know, because apparently they didn't find who they needed. And I got a rejection. Guess who posted it again? They posted the same job. This is the third time in 12 months. So, dear companies, just know that, guess what? When you apply to jobs, LinkedIn will actually say, do you want to follow this company? It knows that. It tracks that. So if we get little job alerts, they'll say, hey, did you know that you're following this company and they just posted this job? And we're like, really? Third time? Really? So this goes back to what you're saying, Elizabeth. Are we supposed to just trust that these companies know what the fuck they're doing when it comes to interviewing people, tracking applicants? And we always get the rejection. And I know everybody's getting it. Oh, sorry, we really liked your, experience, but we're going to move on. We found candidates more, quote unquote, closely aligned with what this role is looking for. But we're going to keep your information on file. Please go follow our careers page. Really? So I'm going to go apply the third time to post the same job? How do I know you're actually keeping my stuff on file? How do I know? Do you have a problem with how you're finding this role? So
and that kills my confidence in the company in general, because I know your resume, right, Rachel? So like I know that if you had not even gotten through to the interview process, either you should have had like maybe a small handful of just like killer applicants that were just like no-brainers. But if you've done that now 3 times and you're still not even getting through to that point, that makes me wonder, like, are you even actually looking for this position? Is this some weird thing you're doing? I mean, remember we heard about it with the PPP loans, and like a lot of companies were suspected of continuing to post jobs so they didn't have to pay. I start to wonder that, and you hear those stories all the time. These companies tell us we're so shorthanded, we need, and it's across all industries. You see it with like restaurants. They're like, we're so sorry, we're so shorthanded. They have the help wanted thing in the window, but then like people go and apply and they don't hire anybody. And you do start to wonder. And also just like culturally, it makes me worry about the company. So that takes one of those companies that you're like, one of those dream companies. You're like, I would love to work for them. And you start to second guess yourself because you're like, how fucked up are you internally that this is like, if this, I can't even get through this part of the process, how hard is every day of my life going to be working with this company?
Yep.
And yeah, it just kills your confidence in the process. It makes me start to wonder if something weird is going on. And I don't want to be like a conspiracy theorist, but you hear these stories a lot and it just doesn't make sense for, for these situations. You should have absolutely gotten through in the very first thing. If not, the only reason I would think you wouldn't even get an interview was them like having an internal hire and they were just, we have to throw it externally.
Right.
That one I get that happens a lot, but clearly not. So what the hell's happening?
Exactly. All right. So someone hire Elizabeth because, again, I mean, here we go. Brand right here. You're getting it all. She's super smart. We're all super smart, but she needs a job. She needs someone to pay her the monies. Yes, she wants money. I mean,
I do want money.
She needs it. I don't know. I don't know if you've been outside the door, and even in your house, you need money.
We've all been exposed to death by PowerPoint, but how about death by presenter? A poor moderator or MC can make your audience engagement crash and burn, while a great one can make your event a lasting and fantastic memory. When Rachel has the mic at your next event, your audiences will feel energized and your content will have the rapt attention it deserves. Book Rachel Has the Mic today at www.butwaitthere'smore.com/contact.
We started to dabble on last week's episode about, can we not like this anymore kind of thing? I know we got on the show notes here, Squishmallows. My daughter's got at least like 6 in her room. So what do we have there, y'all? I need to know, and I'm scared to know.
Well, a lot of what I wanted to talk about is with the genocide in Palestine, you're dealing with a lot of companies that we've learned throughout time are supporting Israel in their fight against the Palestinian people. But it's one of those things where it's like, how much information is an average consumer expected to have about where all of these companies' money is going, right? And little by little, you find it out as you're shamed about it, essentially. So we're currently planning a trip to Disney in April. And I had done a TikTok where I was just kind of like complaining about trying to figure out the Genie Plus system, which it's the new Fast Pass. And I had people going to me like, did you know that Disney gives money to Israel and that you're supporting a genocide? And I'm like, no, I try to, as often as I can, not give to companies that I feel do not match my beliefs. But no, I didn't know that because there's only I knew about Starbucks. I knew about a handful of them and I had actively been trying to avoid them. But no, I didn't know about Disney because I don't think about Disney all the time. And then today, the same thing with the Squishmallows. Yeah, this is weird, but I own 2 frogs as pets. And so I'm on a bunch of frog things on Facebook. And 3 times today, people were posting these cute little Squishmallows that I guess are their new line that they were finding of frogs. And we're just like, oh, that's so cute. And then half of the comments would be like, but do you know that the owner of Squishmallows supports Israel? So then all of a sudden, so then the comments are turned off immediately. And I feel so bad for the people who posted it because they're just like, oh, look at this cute little stuffed animal. And then they're like, do you support a genocide? You're getting to the point where how much are you expected to know about the financial dealings of these companies? Yeah, they're the big ones we've learned over time, Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby. But eventually it might be all of them. And then even if it's not the larger company, the companies that company works with could be, using their money in ways I don't morally or ethically agree with. But it's funny because I just think there's got to be a way to approach this without shaming people and just there's no way you knew this entire time that Squishmallows gives money to Israel. I mean, first of all, a lot of these people didn't even understand what was going on until October 7th. They think it all popped off on that date. We know those people.
Mm-hmm.
But, did you know that? Because I really think you didn't.
Right.
So I don't know. And it's so tough. And I mean, I can't imagine a lot of, as people who've been in a marketing team before, I don't have any control over where my parent company's money goes to. And now suddenly I'm fighting an unwinnable fight with my marketing for something that I can't control it, but also I don't know. It's getting to a point where we need to figure out how to approach these things, realizing that not everybody would just naturally have this information. And it's not because you're ignorant. It's just because that, like, why would I know how Squishmallow's financials run?
Right. I mean, I don't even really know what a Squishmallow is, so you've all just taught me something. I mean, you see what I'm saying? So, like, if I went out today because I'm buying a friend's kid something and I saw a Squishmallow thing, and I'm assuming it sounds like it's cute.
It is cute. It's like basically a big fluffy like stuffed animal that's like
a pillow.
It's like a pillow almost. There are little ones, there are big ones. Like you might not even know. And now they're all the different versions of the same thing that are a different brand. It's hard to keep track of. And but how would an average consumer know?
Expectation that I seeing the Squishmallow for the first time, am I supposed to say, wait, before I spend
apparently
my money here, let me Google?
Even what are you Googling? Because Israel and Hamas? Is it about, or Israel and Palestine? Is it about BLM?
Or,
is it about what is the amount of
like how
Googling,
pure the purity test
Yep.
gets murky because Jesus is still working on me. I try to be the best person I can be each and every day. And obviously, like Elizabeth said, you want to try to, spend your money in ways that aligns with your beliefs.
Right.
And I don't want to be supporting things that don't align with my beliefs, whatever those are.
Right.
But we are consumers too. And I'm like, if I chew gum, am I supposed to know that double bubble, which I happen to chew a lot of because I addiction bubble gum? That is ridiculous. And I need an intervention.
I love that.
I mean, am I supposed to say, wait, before I chew my regular 30 pieces of this bubblegum?
Okay, this is your intervention right now. We need to talk.
Does your jaw not hurt? Because I could get into gum, chain gumming, but Lord.
I buy a bag and just fall into it. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, it's a thing. Which is
it could be worse addictions.
Yeah.
I think
that's this is why I don't get it. This is why I don't get this gum. Okay. But I guess I'm just saying, just on a regular, I'm not living my life thinking everything I touch, should I be? And maybe that's the question. Thinking before I touch a thing or buy a thing or eat a thing or consume a thing or take in some art or whatever, should I have to
never leave
Google?
The house? Yeah.
I just think it's impossible. It is a task that it's never going to happen. Because even if, like I even said earlier, if it's something that okay, so I have this computer here, but it's a part of it that was provided by a different company, made, by Uyghurs or something. There's and you just can't, and especially just because we become such a global economy. It is nearly impossible. And I think
I don't think most people wake up thinking, how can they be hateful?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
What can I do today to support the hateful stance on a particular thing? I think most people are trying to pay bills and
they are doing
get
their
through
best
the day and raise their kids and all that kind of thing. And I don't know that we give people enough grace, which is where I was working up to.
Yes,
I don't think that we give enough grace to give. I mean, like with the Squishmallow example, I mean, maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know, but a pylon certainly.
And who does that pylon happen to? Marketers. Because we're, usually it's those people who are on the front lines of, I'm going to I'm prepping this thing. I work for this brand. I work for Squishmallow or whatever. And they're prepping everything. They're on social media. Good God bless the social media people, or, whether it's specialists or strategists or whatever their titles are. But they're on the front line, and then people go yell, like that person is in any way responsible, and maybe on a one out of a million or something, where they're like, yes, I'm actively using this account to now spew hate from this brand because I have personal things. But for the most part, no, they're doing a job. And Tanya, even too, from a journalistic standpoint, y'all do your due diligence to do all the facts and stuff, and try to not provide bias. And we were just talking about that with AI, where you're like, I need stuff that's, got legit sourcing and stuff like that's not just made up. But yeah, we just live in a world where people are going to get pissed off for any number of reasons, and we're a consumer society. But yeah,
unless you want to go live on a deserted island and, be Tom Hanks with your volleyball. Oh my God, though, who produced that volleyball? Don't make, Wilson, where did he come from? There's gotta be a line
hard
somewhere.
It becomes
hard.
almost a competition for a lot of people too. It's like the competition of who is the most aware. And, I will say, I hate to use the term woke because I'm one of those like, SJW woke people. Like I will fully admit that. But it is who's the most woke about these situations. And it's more about proving to everybody else that you have this knowledge than it is actually at all about the purchasing of these products.
Or helping people.
Yeah, well, that's where my marketer mind went instead of it should be about helping people. No, instead it's what are you purchasing?
But it can't be healthy to wake up on outrage every day. Like, your meters on that can't be healthy.
People sometimes do.
We have to.
I do a lot.
I mean,
I will admit that.
And of course, for clarity's sake, no one in this podcast is saying to hell with it, just buy the things, eat the thing. No one is saying that. We're just saying like the expectation that everybody would know everything, every bit of information at any given moment about any business, manufacturer, or organization is a lot. And it's fine if you want to share that information because maybe now you know about Squishmallow or whatever the
and I can assess that myself, right? Yeah.
But piling on and like yelling at somebody who 2 seconds ago didn't know.
Like, I think it's just order. Damn it.
They thought it was a pillow, whatever. I just thought it was a cookie, whatever the thing is. Just doesn't seem like the best way to go about showing support for whatever the cause is that you are championing.
Exactly.
Yep.
And exactly. That's all.
Dear God, another ad break? Nope. Not when you subscribe to Just Trust Me on Patreon. Get ad-free episodes every time Just Trust Me hits the feeds and power right on through the discussion. Patreon.com/JustTrustMe. Speaking of purchases, we're introducing a new segment called We Got. And I believe this was Elizabeth's idea, and it's very smart because even if we think, the three of us would think we are savvy, I will go, I know not to get scammed, I know not to get phished, I know how to place an ad, therefore I know how ads work, but we still get got. So I will turn it over. Who wants to go on something that you're like, okay, I got something and I did get got based on the marketing because the marketing drew me in?
Well, so we got can also be about things. It doesn't necessarily have to be like you feel like you got scammed out of your dollars when you bought it, but like they got you. Yeah. So recently I keep seeing these ads, and the funniest part about it is it's all Black women, and it's not ads, it's like TikTok creators, people just organically talking about it, talking about like scalp and hair strengthening. And so it's the Mielle, Mielle, rosemary mint scalp and hair strengthening oil, Mielle. And so I have been watching people who do not have my hair type at all talking about this oil for months now, and I finally broke down and bought it. Now, why? Because I am not a Black woman with like 4C curls, but I bought it. So it was definitely one of those things where it was like creators who I really liked, and I'm like, well, maybe I want to try it. So honestly, it smells great. I will say it smells great, and I have very dry, coarse hair. So what's the worst that happens if I have some extra oil in my hair? That's always good for me. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I'm like, why did I, of all people, get got by this? But I did.
That's all good. That's all good. Tanya, do you have one?
See, what happened is everyone else is on social media with the latest outrage or whatever. I use social media for dog videos, cute dog videos, and food. I don't cook anything. Well, that's not true. I cook and bake. But mostly, I just really love to watch somebody cook a thing on a reel. I will spend a whole 30 minutes watching somebody cook a whole thing on a reel. And there's this pasta that people were using in like these different dishes And I was like, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
So I got it's Mielle, and I have it. And let me tell you, because I'm one of those people, like, it's all eggs and flour in different shapes. It all tastes the same, it's just different shapes. No, my friend. No. Mielle is the truth, the light, and the way. Because the way the ripples, it's like this, it's like really long ribbon pasta. And the way the sauce.
See, now I got by you. Now I'm going to have to buy this.
You're getting got. And we're going to put these links in the show notes, by the way, if anyone else wants to get got.
Also only because I've seen, like, they weren't necessarily selling the pasta. They were just creating their dish, but they made it look so good that I was like, I'm going to try. And one of those things, someone was like, what shape is that pasta? And so I got some from the Wegmans. Thank you, Wegmans.
Nice.
And I have maybe like 4 containers.
Oh, wow.
Because I bought one and was like, and then I was like, oh, other people are going to catch on. I should get as much of this as I can. So, Mielle pasta.
All right. Well,
I'm excited to see our show notes because I am definitely going to buy this.
Well, all right. That segues nicely, though, into a bit of a tangent topic. And again, everybody, that was the We Got segment. We're not saying we're opposed to anyone trying to get us in the future. I mean, if you want to try to get us through your marketing, I mean, I think we're all willing.
Hit me with your best shot. Because I've already told you I'm a soft touch right now.
But y'all got, I don't really have anything. I've been a little busy lately, so I haven't been shopping a lot. But influencer marketing. Okay. And then talk about that versus pro marketing. So it sounds like both of you. And whether it was obvious that these people were influenced or not, like Tanya, you said maybe that they weren't like, oh my God, I'm going to help sell this pasta to people. But just by dint of them sharing, this is the pasta I'm using, and it looked good, and you decided to make that choice. Elizabeth, it sounds like you may have been watching people who might be influencing for the hair stuff. Influencers have then been given more clout and authority on these topics when it comes to marketing, even more than like professionals in those areas. So opine about that. What do we think?
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting topic because influencer marketing is fairly new. What we call influencer market, we've always kind of had something like that, but how influencers and professionals in those industries are now being so one-to-one compared to each other when it comes to these things, whether it be something like makeup or health and wellness. Like makeup, you might have like Michaela Noguero from TikTok as opposed to, Bobby Brown. Same thing with health and wellness. I see these fights all the time, specifically on TikTok, between actual doctors and these like wellness gym bro dudes who are arguing with the doctors about whether or not something is healthy for you. And the number of times I will see people fully ride for the gym bro that something is healthy or not healthy, and the doctor's sitting there pulling up like studies and just proof of whatever they're claiming is not correct, and watching as people are more likely to believe an influencer. A lot of it is obviously the parasocial relationships influencers build over time, which I mean, the professionals are also starting, as they're on social media more, they all also are building parasocial relationships. But the strength of the parasocial relationship for influencers with their audience has gotten, I think, so strong that sometimes it's really hard to get people to see that this person, while you may like them and like they might be good at makeup, like they are not a professional. And with makeup, it doesn't really matter so much, but like in the health and wellness area, it really does. And recently on TikTok, there was one that I think really drove this point home. There's this creator called Lauren the Mortician, and her whole shtick was basically like, I'm a mortician, so I've seen kids die in a number of different ways. And so she would basically comment on people's videos of them doing something with their kids and say whether or not it was safe, right? So people ended up becoming really invested in her commentary on these things. And so they would actually, if somebody caught a video of somebody doing something they would think was unsafe with their kid, they would do this thing to call to her that basically said Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. That's a whole other thing. But it was their call to her for her to then stitch the video and talk about it, whether or not it was safe. And she got into this whole argument because there's this guy also named Jamie, the car seat guy, who is a trained car seat certified professional in Canada and the US. And at one point, what happened was Lauren made a comment about the safety of a particular car seat, and Jamie disagreed with her. And the amount of pushback Jamie got, who is like, that's what he does for a living, is that he is certified to analyze the safety of these car seats. And it was a wild ride. There was a lot to it. It was definitely one of those like drama rabbit holes you will fall down. But it proved to me yet again that like how strong that parasocial relationship is with the influencer marketing, that we're getting to the point where people are more apt to listen to the influencer as opposed to the professional, the certified, somebody who this is what they do for a living. It's just been really interesting to watch. And I don't know if either of you have experienced anything with that, but just something I wanted to bring up because I think we're going to see it more and more.
Yeah, certainly have seen it. If you talk about influencers, they just kind of grow that organic following because they seem like they talk with authority. Sometimes all it is having a personality with a microphone and a camera,
Absolutely.
And then they gain that community and that you're part of their, you're part of their ecosystem and their zeitgeist every day. And so you feel like you belong and you're going to trust them more. But to the point where you're tossing aside any critical thinking to say, well, wait a second, someone who does know more than you is talking, but because I'm part of your tribe or whatever, I'm going to trust you instead of the right stuff, right? Absolutely. It's super dangerous, frankly, and you would hope that an influencer would be, and I'm thinking of Joe Rogan right now, I am, because Mr. like, oh yeah, I'm just like going to say totally out of whack things about health and it's like, and wellness, it's like, okay, he wields this amount of influence where people are like, well, he said it, so it must be right. It's like, not necessarily. Yes. It's frustrating and dangerous, frankly.
Yeah, and I think because before, like most of the influencers, when you would think of an influencer, would be somebody makeup, beauty, whatever, fashion. It was less high stakes.
Right.
But we've gotten into a space where influencers are also in these really important, really, again, high stakes industries. And I don't think we were prepared for what that would look like. I think we probably, as a society thought that just wouldn't happen. Like, well, it's a doctor. You listen to a doctor. Or it's a certified car seat safety dude. Yes, you're going to listen to over some random chick who, I just don't think
I think the seeds of it were laid a while ago. I mean, like an example I can think of are vaccines.
Absolutely.
And I'm talking pre-COVID. I'm talking way back when, where you had someone who said, I think my child is autistic because of vaccines. And they that person had enough gravitas that people were like, whoa, wait a minute. And it was also one of those things where people wanted answers, and that felt like an answer. Like if your child is autistic, which has, you're not going to love them any less, but you still want to know how did this happen, and that felt like an answer. And then that gained steam and whatever. So, and then you had the back and forth and the naysaying over the pandemic where we, initially don't wear masks. Okay, wear masks. Right. And then some of that was just, we don't know what we don't know. And now we know a little more than we knew before, but we were guessing. And it undermined the confidence in some of these established medical professionals and fields and things like that. So I say all that to say, I don't know that the genie can be put back in the bottle thing.
Or Genie Plus.
Yeah. Yes. Or the Genie Plus, get put back in the bottle. Did you use Genie Plus? Did you think about how that would impact the people of Palestine? Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle. I do think we need to be more careful about it, but also, do I have faith that we will be? Probably not. It's human nature to feel like somebody and to look toward their opinion as opposed to somebody who might know better, But yeah, and that's an interesting point. Like, is Jenny McCarthy the first one that this happened?
No,
possibly.
Because if you think about it way back, remember, like the snake oil charmers and all that kind of stuff. Invite them, here, come around, come everybody and drink this cocaine.
Oh, now you're making me think of like the music video for "Say" with
yeah, right, exactly.
Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson.
Which, like, back in the day, like, here, drink this cocaine in the bottle and, you know, get a little morphine, you'll be good. You know, like,
yeah, but even back then, the doctors were saying the same thing. That's what made it a more interesting time.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, we're saying, like, they're selling, you know, snake oil or whatever and that kind of thing, you know. And I think the other issue we have today is that there have been, and maybe not even today, but the other issue is that, you know, there's Western medicine and Eastern medicine, and, you know, like, people have found health success in Eastern medicines. And so people are like, well, you know, what do you mean my essential oil rubbed on my temple won't cure my cancer because it did this? You know, it's just, and I mean, I think homeopathic stuff is, you know, my grandma was very much, both of my grandmothers, we all had those grandmothers where they're like, you know, not just put some tussin on it, but is your stomach hurting? Okay, take a little bit of that ginger. And then, you know, and those kinds of things where, you know, or here, stir a little bit of this turmeric in your tea, and those kinds of things.
The Windex from my Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Right. Right.
Or like so many cultures think Vicks will solve anything, that kind of thing.
Put on the bottom of your feet.
Listen, you say that and I have my Vicks.
Of course. As you
going
should.
right now. I mean, right now, as we speak, next to me, my Vicks humidifier is going. You try to balance, like, what's real. And I think the key is to figure out, and then that gets this is a whole nother rabbit hole. What is the intent of the person?
Yes, I was just going to say that. That is,
You know, is it really public health, or is it really to sell a thing so they
or is
can
it a grift?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
that's, the other day, the whole reason I even thought to bring this up was something very similar where it was somebody who was a health and wellness person and they were arguing with a doctor. And I feel like a lot of it is just basic media literacy, which a lot of people don't have. They don't think the first thing to do is go look at how many followers they have. Go look at what they're hawking on their profile. Do they have, like, are they doing something with Amazon? Are they selling something? And I don't think a good amount of society, unfortunately, not yet, is great about being able to just do that very simple dive into, like you said, what's the intent? It's not altruistic. There's a reason they're doing it. I'm sure there are, of course, people who were altruistic, but I think more times than not, when you find the influencers who are fighting with the professionals, you realize, like, they're looking to make a buck too. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're always the first ones, like, for the wellness thing, or as the first ones that, you know, yell about big pharma. And I'm like, but you want to be paid too, don't you? So the intent is really important. And I think I don't think there's anything wrong with turning to an influencer you really like and trust for a lot of things, but being a little more, having your eyes open a little more about why they're possibly hawking whatever they're hawking, good or bad.
Yeah. See, we have so much to talk about.
That's
also,
good.
Aligned with what we were just talking about, you can trust us, but we are real people. We're flawed people. We're human people, but we're just here to talk about all these things, you know, about trust in marketing and in trust in life, which so much of life is about marketing, it seems like. But another thing we're going to be doing too, obviously we talk and discuss these things here, always with the best of intentions, because we want to dissect stuff. We also have intention to provide you, just like, you know, maybe we're influencing you with what we discuss, but we also want to provide you with, like, experts. So we're going to be including at the end of each episode a nice little interview with someone who is an expert in their field, probably of marketing or something related, and talking about this whole trust issue and then how it comes into play in what they're good at. And they'll probably come with receipts, which is good. You know, we like receipts where people are like
receipts.
We do. We like all the letters and saying, hey, I have these letters after my name, or, you know, you've got the creds. And so we'll be bringing that to y'all. But before we wrap up, I know we always want to let people know we're real people. Tanya, where can we find and follow you online?
I'm always TBB at TDOUBLEB. Pretty much everywhere you look, that's where you'll find me, TBB.
Nice. And then Elizabeth, how about you?
My LinkedIn is the one I'm giving out right now, Elizabeth Allen 1001 on LinkedIn.
Nice. And then I am Rachel Has the Mic, MIC, just about everywhere.
But it's fun as we get these recordings going because one of my podcasts I like to listen to is The Daily Zeitgeist, and there's a dude on there. He's like always the one he's in the middle of the zeitgeist and the pop culture, and he's like, he knows the TikToks that are going around and stuff. Elizabeth, I have a feeling you're going to be our zeitgeist person, because I'm like, I don't know. And you're like, well, let me tell you. I will tell you who on TikTok talked about this. And I'll be like, oh my God, tell me more. But we need that because obviously it's a big deal.
Yeah. I just broke down and went ahead and signed on to Threads the other day. I was like, because I've been so resistant to having another like social account. Wow. I was like, it's another thing to like check and keep. I mean, I don't have to do it. I don't, but I try to claim all the things with my name because again, you market yourself.
It's your brand.
Yeah, my brand. Really, and I'm like, I don't want anybody on there like talking about poop butt stuff with TBB on it.
Well, we're gonna talk about poop butt stuff next week. No, we're not. Okay. We can, but
Aww.
I mean, if it's about trust, sure, why not? Next up on Just Trust Me is our interview with personal branding expert Christine Gritman. Joining the Just Trust Me pod today is my new favorite person across the pond who's living my dream of abiding in the UK. She's a personal branding coach, a content strategist, and someone who probably shows up in your search results when you're trying to find the right gift to post.
Amen.
Christine Gritman, welcome to the Just Trust Me podcast. Happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Rachel Moore.
Thank you. Not lying too, I've been following your travels and your journey as moving across the pond, and I'm having all the vicarious, you're definitely doing things that I wish I could do, so I'm envious.
Thanks. I try to remind myself of that when things are tricky. I'm like, you know what? I'm living a lot of people's dream, and that also inspires me to do cooler things because I'm like, I'm writing a cool life story here.
You are.
Let's strategize this content. No.
That's right. Which carries us right. One reason I wanted to invite you on here, not just because you are one of my favorite UK people, but so this podcast, obviously it's Just Trust Me. For our first part of it, myself and my co-hosts, Elizabeth and Tanya, really just banter about all the things we're seeing in marketing. Some of it gets into pop culture and current events too, but a lot of it is about messaging and how these things are or are not trustworthy, and the things we learn about that. So your jam is personal branding. And y'all, you can't see her, but she's wearing red headphones. If you're going to go visit Christine's LinkedIn and on her brand stuff, you're going to see a theme. But you walk the talk. Your jam is personal branding. You and I both know that's crucial for literally anything, even if someone never works in marketing.
Exactly.
And so can you talk to our audience about why is personal brand crucial for establishing trust?
Well, the short version is because people trust people. They don't trust marketers or marketing materials. They don't trust stuff that comes from a brand. And that can be a tricky thing when creating your personal brand. Because sometimes people do try to take that a little heavily towards the brand end. They focus more on seeming perfect and smooth and, produced than on seeming real. And that is not the way to go about it. Really, keeping the personal in the personal brand, your flaws are your strengths. Your relatability is your strength. I'm not saying go out there and be a hot mess, but the fact is when thinking about your personal brand, remember the biggest advantage you have over a brand or brand messaging, and the biggest way to get over those walls that people put around themselves when opting not to trust someone is to just be a human and to be as real as possible. And I don't mean just seem as real as possible. I mean be as real as possible. Be you to 11.
Nice. I'm going to admit to you right now, I only just watched, what is that
This
movie?
Is Spinal Tap?
I only saw them.
But
Thank you.
Know the reference anyway.
It,
that's the thing. It's one of those things where people know it's branded in people's minds.
It is. Well, and like I said, I haven't seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show either. I was born in 1974. There's no excuse. No. I know. My husband keeps just like, how did this happen? How did we even get together? But no, I thank you for the infusion of Spinal Tap. Yeah, just saw it 2 summers ago. But you're absolutely right. And that, I think, too, is where so many brands, you want to be perfect. You do want a shiny, no mistakes, a spotless persona, spotless front or facade put out there. And I think we're finding, and it really did happen. I almost can pinpoint it, there was like a time when suddenly the less produced videos or the less produced moments, it's the reason why TikTok, there's a lot of production that goes into TikTok, but some of it's just like real people talking, saying, hear me with all my warts.
And that started with
so
Snapchat too. I mean, that was when it became less about things that you even could produce in advance. Because when apps like Snapchat and TikTok came on the scene, and even back in the olden days of Instagram, you couldn't use a real camera and some editing software and then just upload it. These things had to be created not only in app, but specifically on a mobile phone. And that was a huge game changer. And I think that's because with the advent of social media and with everyone having a platform and everyone getting their, Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame, people really did start to become brands pretty quickly. And I think people, smelled shenanigans there. They were just like, this was someone who I enjoyed trusting. And then brands always ruin everything. Marketers ruin everything. So marketers were finally allowed on the platform, and they said, oh, these people have all this trust. These people have people who like them just for themselves. How can we monetize that? And so that's really when, the most powerful ever tool for personal branding. And personal brands have been around forever and ever. I mean, God, Cleopatra, for God's sakes. But Jesus Christ, literally. But social media was an unprecedented level of opportunity for that. And of course, marketers had to come in and ruin it and turn it into, taking away what was special about it, which was a human connection element, and turning into a commodity. And I think that's kind of the most important thing to remember with your personal brand. It's you. You can use it to drive business. You ought to use it to drive business, but the fact remains you have to make sure that your head's in the right place, your heart's in the right place, and you don't become more brand than human, because that loses the magic and the wrong people will trust you.
Yeah. Oh, great point. And you always have to keep that audience in mind. And there can be those pitfalls behind. If you're going to be too fake or too produced, who are you drawing to yourself? I want to ask, so this is the primary audience of this podcast are marketers, of which you and I are both marketers. And so I think all of us will identify with what I'm about to say. Marketers are the worst at our own personal branding. But it's often not through lack of will, though I do want to defer to you a bit on this because I know you coach people on this. It's not usually through lack of wanting to. It's usually a lack of time, because we're literally spending every ounce of creativity, every moment on someone else's or something else's brand instead of our own. We would love your advice for marketers to make, how do we make our personal brand happen in light of that consideration of when?
Yeah, it's less about it's about realizing that your personal brand isn't something you create and strategize necessarily. I mean, strategy is great. Strategy will certainly help you. I am a personal brand strategist. Hire me. No, but when it comes down to it, it's really about not holding your brand back. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. They see your personal brand as something they'll have to put effort into creating, then effort into maintaining, and like it's a whole separate second job. But if you're doing it right, it's something that's happening alongside everything you're already doing. It's really about what you choose to share. So let's say your personal brand is that you want to be known as like this awesome Instagram content strategist or whatever, or content creator. And so you've spent your day creating content for the brand you work for. Obviously, you're not going to necessarily share a ton of that on your personal profile. You probably can't. But what you can do is, either hop on as a talking head or just, put a picture and write stuff and just be like, hey, here's how I spent my day. What's your office of the day look like? And that can be as simple as like, I went to a printing company once to do a strategy session with them. And I just took a picture. There were some, trimmed edges on the ground that looked really cool. They were colorful. And I just posted a picture of the trimmed edges this was years and years ago. Don't scroll all the way back. But I took a picture of those trimmed edges on the floor. And I was just like, it's always so cool to get to talk to, you know, different types of industries in my work, because they all need the same stuff, blah, blah, blah. And that was really cool. You know, there's always those moments where you can choose to show things or share things from your day, from your work, from your personal life even. And I don't mean you have to become one of those LinkedIn poets who's like, you know, this morning I was having my, you know, morning post-coffee poop, and I got to thinking about how it relates to marketing. You know, you don't have to like strain that hard, as it were, to find the golden nugget. But, you know, they're there. And just by being yourself, taking people along on that journey, it, first of all, makes people feel like they know you a little bit, which is really cool. Second of all, if you do relate a good amount of that to what you actually do, it cements that in people's heads without you having to literally show the work necessarily. Because if the work is for someone else, if the work is for a brand, if the work is for a client, if the work is for your employer, if the work even has nothing to do with, you know, what you're trying to do as your own brand, like, because some people, their day job and their passion don't meet up.
Right.
Just sharing that and cementing yourself in the head as this is what someone is doing. This is how someone is spending their time. These are the thoughts this person tends to think about. That can go incredibly far. And that doesn't have to be perfect or polished. It doesn't have to be pre-scripted. It can be very in the moment. I think a lot of personal branding, people get in their own way when it comes to not realizing it's just a matter of freeing yourself to feel free to express what's personally happening, as opposed to always having to make it be content with a capital C.
Yeah.
You can do some of that too. That is a good idea. I myself need to get back to doing a bit more of that. But I am my business. A lot of people have a little bit more separation there. And I feel like just taking people along for the journey and just cementing yourself as here's how this person is. And I'm seeing behind the curtain, and that makes me feel like I know this person. And the fact that they're not just showing me this perfect, slick veneer makes me trust them a little bit more and connect with them a little bit more than something that feels too perfect and like a piece of marketing.
I really like that you say that too. I gotta admit, and I think our listeners are probably the same, you know, we're all kind of like, hey, when and where can I do that? I'll just share too. I've really tried to go kind of whole hog into TikTok, because I do, but I don't produce. I've done that before, and it's fun, but it does take time. But I just get like, I actually do a thing, and I'm getting back into it because I did start my workout regimen again. But where after I work out, I'll just get on and do a 60-second TikTok, and I call it my post-work-out, whatever it is, right? I work out. Usually there's things going on in my brain while I'm working out, or there's like music that I do an app with my VR headset, and there's music that lets me work out to it, and I'll share something about that, or that'll be the music on it. But I'm always just saying, hey, here's something that I just thought about as I did my post-workout. It can be that simple, like you said. And I'll just say, y'all, if you go find it, I'm sweaty. It's not my best face, you know. But it's like, well, I just worked out. What do you want? I'm not going to be like, ooh, look at me. I came out of a makeup chair.
It's the vibes.
Exactly.
I always say, like, when people talk to me about analytics and KPIs and all that stuff, I'm like, my favorite KPI is vibes. And that's not just because I'm too lazy to learn GA4. It's also because genuinely with brands, I feel like the measurement is less... First of all, it's very much a marathon, not a sprint, when it comes to things like, you know, the ROI of your personal brand. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about people getting to know, like, and trust you in a slower, deeper way. And, you know, you're not going to be for everybody, and that's important to recognize and embrace. You're just for the people who you're for. But then it's also the fact that, you know, it's hard to measure enthusiasm. And it's hard to measure, it's hard to connect business results sometimes in a measurable way, because I know personally the people who engage with my social media posts, the people who click on things in my emails, the people who respond in that way that you can measure are often not the people who hire me. Lurkers hire me.
Right.
Lurkers absolutely hire me at a far higher rate than people who really engage with my stuff. And so that's one of the tricky things about branding and the cross-section of personal branding and marketing is that it's so hard to measure, because I really do mean the main thing is vibes. You know, how do you really measure trust. And furthermore, the people who know, like, and trust me and the people who hire me are also, you know, there's a Venn diagram there, but the proportions are constantly shifting. So I think worrying less about personal brand as a measurable marketing activity and being a freaking human is really, again, just be human, just be a person. And when it comes to how your personal brand can build your business, that's just a matter of not making people have to work too hard to figure out how you might be professionally relevant to them.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a really good point. Not making people have to work too hard. I think that's because when you do put that veneer out there, everybody expects that. You know, we're all just, Super Bowl just happened. We all saw these, you know, millions of dollars of ads that just got produced, you know, and that, you know, that went through at least 6 months of preparation and, you know, the production, everything. They were really trying to put that out there. They had a plan and a message. So that's like delivered to you on a silver platter. But people want to go back to the kitchen and say, I want to see, give me the stuff that you're making back here. I want to see how it's made and, you know, and talk to the chef. And, you know, people want that because, the more you have that veneer, they know there's real people behind it, but you're making them dig for it unless you're like saying, hey, I am putting out, like, and a brand can do that, right? Yeah. Because they can still have that veneer kind of thing, but then showcasing, okay, that behind every brand, there's people, right? Yeah. To be able to showcase
There is
that.
a huge, massive corporation that tends to be synonymous with massive corporation in a lot of people's heads. And I did a couple workshops for them a couple years ago about how they can emphasize the human element in what they're doing. Yeah. And, you know, it's a retail chain. And, you know, I talked to them. They were very smart and they recognized that it was in their best interest to empower people at the local store level, not to be a big faceless behemoth where every store was posting the same thing. And it was really fun because some of their stores were doing a kick-ass job of really reminding people, okay, maybe the company that owns this building and this business is a huge faceless behemoth, but your friends and neighbors work here. And you go here to get the necessities of everyday life. And these people know what they are because these people are living very similar lives to yours. And that looks different in different parts of the country. That looks different from town to town. And there were even some minor social media celebrities created out of some of their store employees. This is someone who has, you know, probably not much more than minimum wage hourly retail job. Yeah. And she's got thousands of people being like, oh, we want to see her next video. And I mean, that's good for the business, but that's also kind of cool. I feel like that's something that I've worked primarily with small businesses, teeny tiny mom and pops, and businesses that are literally like solopreneurs, one-person businesses. And I've always told them, your superpower is that personal touch. And your superpower is why people will choose to go to you rather than to some big faceless whatever. So I really loved the opportunity to help actually a big guy corral that. I'm like, see, okay, they're just proving what I told the little guys all along, which is that the little guys have an advantage if they choose to exercise it. On the flip side, when I started my business, there were people who said, oh, you know, have a fake assistant, have an email address like, you know, Bob at ChristineGritman.com or whatever. And, you know, it'll make you look more important. Or, you know, have a company name instead of just your name. And I was like, no, because it's me. and I think that's what people who buy into my company and my services, that's what they want. That's why my business has been able to change what it does. Yeah. At various points. I mean, before I started my business, I was a local journalist. Completely different model. But the way I was able to do that, the way I was able to get businesses to actually hire me in a field in which I had no professional experience whatsoever, is because they trusted me. Yeah. Because they had seen the work I had done as a journalist. They knew that I supported business. They knew that I supported local business. They knew I knew what to do on social media because it's part of how they knew me. And so I was able to parlay that trust into whatever I wanted to do next. And I'm kind of at a crossroads in my business now. But one thing that I'm not worried about is the concept of, oh, I'll have to start from scratch, because I won't. Right. because,
exactly.
The trust you spend years building, that will always help carry you to whatever you want to do next, because what people are buying into is not the service you provide, it's you.
That's right. Great point. And let's talk about personal brand versus a business brand.
Yep.
So again, audience of marketers out here, how does the personal brand of a marketer potentially impact the business brand that they're trying to amplify?
Yeah, and that can go differently depending on if the business brand they're trying to amplify is their own business, like if they're an agency owner or solopreneur, service provider, or if they work for a business. So I'm going to handle it from both angles, actually.
Great.
So I'm going to start with what seems to be the trickier one, which is if they work for a business. This is something that I've actually been giving a lot of thought to, and I've started working with businesses, and I hadn't been before, like big businesses. Previously, I was like, no, because I care about the little guy. I don't want to work with big companies. And then I realized my heart's way in to that work was that companies are made up of individuals, and those individuals should not disappear. They are, in fact, the company's greatest strength. No matter what your business does, who you are, what your business does, someone else does what you do. Someone else may even do it better. The only true difference that you have is your people. And so I've been talking to businesses lately, and I've been coming into businesses and giving talks lately about how it's actually good for the business if their employees have their own separate personal brands. I'm not talking about employee advocacy where the company says, here's what we want to promote. Could you guys promote it on your personal profiles? No. What I mean is, your company has smart people who are good at things. Why not have those become the respected people in your industry? Why not show them off? And why not encourage them to show themselves off and develop their own names? And companies used to be scared, and old school companies still are scared, that if their employee has a strong personal brand, they'll be more poachable, or the person will be putting their brand over the business that they work for. And I have thankfully found actual statistics to show that that's nonsense, but it is very good for brand visibility if individuals have their own personal brand, because a person's messaging is likely to go a lot farther than a brand's messaging. It's good for company reputation, because if people trust the person, they'll, that'll reflect back on the company they work for. They'll feel like this person I trust would not work for an untrustworthy company. It's good for employee engagement and retention, because a person is much more likely to stay someplace where they feel like they can grow and where they are valued as themselves and not being kind of pressed down into a box and becoming, faceless number. And finally, it's really good for recruitment, because other people who look up to that person with a strong personal brand are going to be like, oh, they work at this place. I'd love to work with that smart person. And if I work at the same place as that smart person, some of their reflected glory will get on me. So the best ways to do that is really, first of all, if you're employed, check out your employee handbook, check out your employment agreement, because some places clamp down on that stuff, but don't be afraid to have a chat. Have a chat with your manager. Have a chat with HR. If it feels too restrictive, be like, hey, this is needlessly restrictive, and here's why it's actually bad for you. But then in addition to that, beyond that, think about what lights you up. Why do you do what you do? What actually makes you want to try? What makes you be there besides, not like if you didn't get paid, because if I didn't get paid, I wouldn't work anywhere, personally.
Of course.
But,
no one would.
So I'm not going to that level. But what makes this a career for you, not just a job? What do you actually care about? What lights you up about it? What made you get into it to begin with? That's all stuff to really look to as kind of your why, to use the cliche. And talk about that, geek out on that. Be like, this is the human side of it. This is what someone who actually cares about this stuff looks like. This is what someone who actually cares about this stuff thinks like. So I think that's huge. But then also, if you are a personal brand promoting your own company, it can be very tricky to hit the balance of not being too marketing-y without, slipping into nonsense. And as I said before, my own accounts have slipped into nonsense. I'm not doing any very professional content lately because that's just where I'm at right now. But when I start doing it again, I think people are going to trust it a little more, because they're going to know that they saw me going through this crazy time with the move and all sorts of life adjustments. They saw me through that, and they're going to be like, oh, yay, we're happy to see you back. Instead of saying, ew, it's a marketing message, they'll be like, oh, yeah, she's back on her game. That's really what it does. It gets you cheerleaders. But I'd say have a balance there. The expert people say do like 80% stuff that builds trust and that gives, knowledge away for free and all that, and 20% promotion.
Yeah.
And it can be that's a little too planned for my liking. What I would say is just always remember that nobody owes you their attention, and that if you would like to have their attention when you have something to sell, you need to first earn their attention by bringing value to the table when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Or when they're not buying or whatever. Like, you have to remain a valuable presence, whether that means giving tips and tricks or whether that just means, again, vibes. They need to be looking when they're not buying in order to make sure that their eyeballs are there when they are buying.
Yeah.
And I say this to realtors a lot. I've worked with a lot of real estate professionals, and, real estate purchases are not something most of us make on a regular basis.
Right.
But the people whose names we know and the people who we've been following and the people who we're interested in when we're not looking, we're just kind of, perusing house porn or whatever, that's who we're going to think of to go to when it's time to buy or sell, because that's the name that's in our head in a highly, congested field.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what it comes down to. Give them a reason to be watching when they don't need to buy so that their eyeballs are there when they are ready to buy, and don't be like clumping them over the head with sales all the time. Bring value. Let there be a point.
Yeah. No, I love it. This is all such great advice and information. Tons of us are, carving our own path in our own business, but so many of us are, doing marketing for our brand, but just seeing how the humanity should be part of all of that. But finally, easiest question of all, maybe, but probably with you, this is the easiest question. Where can our listeners find and follow you online, Christine?
I mean, just look up a GIF and I'm probably in there with my red background. No, in fact, I'm kicking myself because my GIFs have hundreds of millions of impressions and my name is nowhere on them. I gotta go re-edit them. Anyway, I am the only Christine Gritman in the world. Grit, like when something is gritty, like sand. MON, like Monday. So Christine Gritman. So I'm at Gritman.com. I'm C Gritman on a lot of socials. I'm just Christine Gritman on some other ones. But if you just look up Christine Gritman, it's me. And I have a podcast. I still need to bring it back for the season. Hopefully by the time this airs, I will have. But it is called Let's Talk About Brand. It's also available on YouTube. In fact, all 4 seasons are available on YouTube. I'm still working on getting some of them into podcast form. And that is lots and lots and lots of conversations with smart people about different elements of branding.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Just Trust Me Marketing Podcast. Show notes are prepared by Elizabeth Allen, podcast production and publishing by me, Rachel Moore. We're still new to the feeds, so if you happen to like this episode, we trust you to leave us a review to let other listeners know they can trust us for a great podcast experience. We're also on TikTok and Instagram at Just Trust Me Podcast. Show notes and podcast episodes live on www.butwaitthere'smore.com, and ad-free episodes are available on Patreon. But wait, before you start shopping for pasta or hair care products, follow or subscribe to this podcast now. We'll be back with more dissection and discussion of all that's in marketing in our next episode. Just trust me.